Hello everyone. Thank you for attending today's Watershed webinar, Kayaking the Storm Surge. Lessons learned about the environment from 30 years of whitewater boating. Our presenter is Dr. Joel Bandstra, Professor of Environmental Engineering at St. Francis University.
All right, yeah. So feel free to chime in with questions in the chat if you have any as they come up. So a little bit about me. First of all, thanks for coming and thanks to Michael for organizing this and that introduction. So I'm a professor of environmental engineering at St. Francis, and I've been doing that for 13 years. I actually started the program here, but before that, I got into whitewater kayaking. Actually, when I was 11 years old, I got into whitewater kayaking, and that was really what led me into environmental engineering. So I got really excited about kayaking when I was a teenager, and my mom said maybe environmental engineering would be a good major for you in college. That's the path that I went, and it's really been important to me professionally. I've never presented anything about kayaking before. Like I just go kayaking. Don't really talk a lot about it. So this is definitely going to be a very different kind of talk for me. But I hope to kind of convey to you, as those objectives indicated, I hope to kind of convey to you, some sense of why kayaking has been so important to me professionally as an environmental engineer, and then also maybe show you that Pennsylvania is a really good place to go kayaking. The picture that's there on my first slide is not in Pennsylvania. That's in Oregon. But I think you'll see right away here that we have places in Pennsylvania that are kind of on par or almost as good as some of the things that are out west. So I hope to show you some of the resources that are right here in our own backyard, and maybe encourage you to participate. Maybe not at the adrenaline junkie level that I do all the time, but I think you'll see that there's a lot of variety and opportunity. So with that, I'll go ahead and get into it here. So here's my outline for today. So I want to give you a little tour of the whitewater in Pennsylvania, talk to you a little bit about some of the places that have been important to me. And I think you'll see a strong emphasis there on the whitewater. Then I want to kind of step outside of the fun and talk about watershed science, but especially talk about some of the things that I think you can see and experience from kayaking. Some of the things that I experienced from kayaking that got me really engaged in wanting to be an environmental engineer, and that still keep me going in terms of wanting to do my work as an environmental engineer. Then lastly, I'll try to maybe encourage you to go and show you some resources about how you could go kayaking or boating. I'll use that term kind of interchangeably here. So the first thing to note is that Pennsylvania, we're really blessed. We have so many streams, and here's a map showing the publicly owned stream beds in Pennsylvania, and they're all over the place. Pennsylvania, you can see that stat there, greater than 86,000 miles of rivers, streams, and creeks, and that's second in the U.S. only to Alaska. So we really are blessed with a wealth of water resources, and because we also have some hills around Pennsylvania, we have some whitewater. So this is a map from the American Whitewater Affiliation, the AWA, and they've mapped out a lot of the whitewater streams in Pennsylvania here on this map. And the color coding up here, basically like green is fairly easy, and red is pretty hard. So like when I look at this, I'm looking for black and red as the places I want to go. But you'll note that there's like a wide range of different types of streams in Pennsylvania, different levels of difficulty, and it's really kind of distributed all throughout the state. And the only places where there's kind of blank spots are just places where maybe the rivers haven't been as popular or as explored quite as much. So I'm going to take you on a tour, as I promised. I'll start over in the eastern part of the state and kind of spiral in closer to home here. So this is the Delaware Water Gap, and here's the kind of whitewater you might find over there. So that's a run called Van Campen Mill, and it's pretty cool drop. That's Raymond's Kill Creek, and a couple of big drops there. So those are waterfalls. All those little streams that flow into the Delaware Water Gap, they have waterfalls on them, and when it rains hard, good for kayaking. If I go up north of Williamsport, find another place with a lot of good kayaking. This is Rock Run. They're off of I-15 back in the woods, and really neat river, really boxed in a way that you don't think of as being present in Pennsylvania. This is the Roaring Branch in that same area. And it's really neat how there are these cliffs that just come down both sides down to the river. Something you see a lot of out west, but it's also here in Pennsylvania. So some neat whitewater streams in that area as well. If I go up to here to the Erie area, you also see some whitewater up there. So this is 12-mile run. They have all these rivers up there called like 12-mile run, 8-mile run, 6-mile run, all these different mile runs. And this is 12-mile run, so some neat kind of slidey, shale type of rapids on there. And this is the Kawashannock in that same, a little bit further south, but in that same sort of area. Another place with a lot of like shale, ledgy type rivers. And down here, this is probably the most famous place in Pennsylvania for boating. That's the Ohiopyle area, and people are used to that in terms of the whitewater rafting down there. But of course, we kayak there too, and including over the falls down there. So Ohiopyle Falls. You'll notice that guy there, he's actually standing up. He's in like an inflatable kayak, and he's standing up going over the falls. He's kind of famous in the region for standing up and going down all these rivers. But it's not just the Yacht down there. A lot of the streams that go into the Yacht, like this is Drake Run, which is closer to Confluence, and you can just see someone's paddle right there. I don't know if you can, if you notice that looks like a rock at first. That's actually somebody's paddle, and they're just like buried down into that hydraulic. And this is Fikes Run down along the Maryland border. And sometimes when we go kayakers, serious kayakers, we go all year round, as you can kind of see here. And in fact, wintertime is actually a great time to go kayaking. It's invigorating. It's tough, and the water is oftentimes up because the leaves are off the trees. So when the leaves aren't on the trees, we get a lot less evapotranspiration. And that means that the rivers get a little higher. So we actually like to go in the winter time. That's maybe shows what kind of an addiction the whitewater becomes. But that little Fikes Run is really nice. And then if you've been down to Ohiopyle, you might have taken a swim here in the summertime. So this is the Meadow Run, where people go when the water's low. They go on it as like a natural water slide. But when the river is up, it's a really nice kayaking run. So it's just as much fun in a kayak as it is sliding down when the river's low. And then finally on this tour, let me take you right here to the Johnstown area. So we have some really great whitewater right in Johnstown on the Stony Creek in particular. Here's a kind of a zoom in on that American whitewater map, and you'll notice. Remember this is like kind of the scale of difficulty. So red is tough, green is easy, and just like the rest of Pennsylvania, we have the whole range of different levels of whitewater here. We have some really tough things. We have some intermediate type things, sort of similar to what's in Ohiopyle, but we also have a lot of places for beginners to go, like over on the Loyalhanna or down on the Conemaugh. I think I got a question here in the chat. Is there a resource map for access points? Yeah, so actually this map on, to the question in the chat is there a resource / map for access points? Here is in Bedford County, there is a lot of navigable water, but finding access seems to be an issue. So for these whitewater streams, if you go onto the American Whitewater affiliation webpage and you kind of click into here, it'll have a section on access points, put in and take out. I'll get to it a little bit later, like for Bedford County especially. A good place to look would be the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission's water trails website. So I'll bring that up in a little bit. We can talk about that a little bit more. All right, so yeah, so this is the Johnstown area, great whitewater here around our area. This guy, Barry Toscano, he's there on the Stony Creek, and he's one of the, you can tell by his beard, he's one of the guys that's been kayaking around here for basically forever. And it's not just old guys like me and Barry, but a lot of young people in the sport. Like I said, I started out when I was 11, and this guy's even younger than that. So good sport for kids, and it's a great sport for college students. This is a raft, of course, not kayaking, but these are St. Francis students on the Blacklet Creek, which also has whitewater, kind of similar to what's in Ohiopyle on it down towards the kind of Indiana end of the Blacklet Creek. This is one of our favorites here in the area, Paint Creek. So that's probably our hardest run. So that's the one we go to when it rains real hard. And this is one of the funnest rapids on there. You can see that that guy is getting some air. There's another rapid on Paint Creek. That Paint Creek is probably a good place for me to transition out of this tour of Pennsylvania whitewater and start to talk about some of the watershed science that you can see as when you're in the seat of a kayak. And Paint Creek's a good example because it's so polluted. So a lot of what you see in terms of watershed science is pollution. And so here's some of the things I'm gonna talk about. So I'll step through these one by one. But the first thing that I experienced firsthand as a kayaker is this concept of a first flush. So I can explain that just here in this picture. In general terms, the idea of the first flush is that when it's dry, you have contaminants, like oils and greases from cars, or things that people spread on their lawns, whatever. All those things are just kind of building up on the land surface. And then when it rains, some of that material then gets carried along with the runoff. So when it rains, the first flush of material going into the streams is especially contaminated. And well, let me explain this one first. I'll go back. Maybe those are a little out of order. So here's the idea here is what's called a chemical hydrograph. So there's a couple of things going on. First is the hydrograph. So that's the yellow. And that's plotted as over here, this would be flow rate in, let's say, cubic feet per second. And then down here is time. So the yellow curve, yellow slide there is showing us how much flow is in the river. This is the Perkiomen Creek out in, like kind of Pottstown area of Pennsylvania. So, so this is the flow in the stream. So obviously it rained, right? So it rains, the flow in the river goes up, and then it goes back down. The other curves, the purple and the blue, these lines right there, those are showing phosphorus and suspended solids. So phosphorus, that's basically the fertilizer in this, and then suspended solids, that's like how muddy the water is. And you can see that both of those things, they spike and then they drop, and they actually spike just a little bit before the amount of flow in the river actually spikes. So when the river is going up, we get this spike in contaminants, and then after the river, while the river is still peaking, those contaminants start to flush out, and that's the first flush phenomenon. So that first, flush of stormwater going into a stream carries the most contaminants. And I said that this is kind of relevant to kayaking. So here's that Paint Creek. So like I said, this is the hard one here in Pennsylvania. And this is basically the section we run. So if you're familiar with the area, we've got Wimber up here, and this is Carpenter's Park down here, and like 219 is just off the screen a little bit. And the section that we runs past this gigantic, just huge bony pile there around Paint Township, and the way that I experience first flush through this is when it rains real hard, the creek will turn black, and it turns black because of the sediment that's being washed out off of this bony pile, and actually it turns black right before it gets really high. So if you go back to that first flush idea, I'm getting the first. Visually, I can sit down here where we get out, where we take out, and then when I see the creek get black, I know that it's about to get really high. And so I don't have the time to do this as much anymore. But when I was a teenager, like I would get out of school, and if it was raining, I would go and sit, and then I'd wait for the Paint Creek to turn black. And then I drive up to where we get in, and right at that time, just like right after it turned black, then it would be really raging. So I could always catch it really, really high. So a bad thing for water quality, but I got a lot of personal enjoyment out of it. Okay, so that's the first flush. Another thing that I see and experience about watershed science is the effect of impervious surface. So let me go to Paint Creek again here. So here's a zoomed out view now of the watershed. So the part we kayak is down here, but the watershed's bigger, and here's the satellite image of that. And what you should notice on the satellite image is there's, compared to a lot of Pennsylvania, not a lot of trees. I mean, there are trees, but in the Paint Creek watershed overall, there are a lot of zones with no trees. Obviously, there's wimber, and like scalp level and that whole area. But then there are all these like grassy zones, and those aren't. I mean, it looks like grass, looks like a field, but really what that is like poorly reclaimed strip mine. So if you drive up in there, it won't really look like a field or a grassy thing. It'll look more like a strip mine. So because of that, because of all that impervious or poorly covered surface in the Paint Creek watershed, when it rains, Paint Creek comes up really fast, which is part of the reason why when I wanted to go kayaking there, I could time it with that first flush. So it's, again, not a good thing for the creek in terms of water quality or erosion or anything like that. But I've experienced that kind of effect of the poor quality of this stream in terms of its watershed area, leading to a really flashy type of a system where it goes up really fast and then goes down really fast. So here's what kind of looks like. Sorry for the kind of fuzzy GoPro capture here, but when it gets really raging, that's the kind of thing we're looking at. It's a lot of fun. This is a cartoon. I like this cartoon. The joy of flood is the idea here. So when the river gets really high, it just takes on a whole new character. And if you're into that kind of thing, that kind of adrenaline rush, it's a lot of fun. And of course, that's not a good thing. Those floods. I mean, some flooding is of course natural, but it's really been something that's been amplified by human activity in terms of building our houses and our parking lots and all of those kinds of things. So we are trying to ameliorate that problem because of all the trouble that comes with it. Property damage and pollution and erosion and property loss, all those kinds of things. So this is kind of the traditional way to try to handle storm surges, to try to drop them down. This is a retention pond, and you'll see these all over the place. So the idea is you have an outlet like that, and you have some inlet from impervious surface or lawns or things like that. So developed areas, and then you just store the water. The idea is you just store that storm water in the pond and then let it release more slowly over time after the storm is over. So that can be underground too. This is actually down in Altoona when they were installing some detention basins under the like Mansion Park area. And the idea, this is the idea. So this is back to those hydrographs again. So we've got the discharge, the flow in the river versus time. And they're showing here conceptually showing three different scenarios the pre-development case here in dark blue, and then the post-development case in, you know, whatever that color is, fuchsia or something, and then the post-development with detention. Okay, that's in the light. So the idea here is pre-development, we have a certain response to a rainfall event. So it rains, the stream goes up, and then after it stops raining, the stream, you know, recedes. Well, when you develop the area with houses or, you know, Kentucky Fried Chickens or whatever it is, what happens is you get a lot more runoff, and you get that runoff a lot quicker. So it goes up higher, and that you hit that peak sooner. So the idea with detention basins is, well, let's just take that excess runoff and store it, and then let it release more slowly over time. That's the whole idea with detention basins, and civil and environmental engineers have been trying to do this for, you know, the past 50 years or so, to build in these types of detention basins to reduce flooding. Great in theory. Problem is it doesn't really work. So so this is what happens if you have a bunch of different watersheds all in a single catchment where there's development going on. So imagine you have a larger catchment, sort of like Paint Creek. You know, you've got that area of Wimber, you've got, you know, Scalp Level, you've got all these different areas throughout the watershed. And imagine that you go to every single one of those and you put in some of these detention basins. Well, the idea when you design a detention basin would be that for every individual basin, like down here, basin 5, basin 2, basin 3, basin 4, for every single one of those, you take the pre-development hydrograph, which is in the blue, and then you sort of lop it off and let that water release more slowly over time. So the red would be the post-development. Well, when you add up the cumulative effects of all that development and detention throughout the system, you still get flooding. So this is the overall system. The pre-development case is in the blue, and that's the sum of all these, the adding up of all these blue individual subbasin hydrographs. But then the red is with detention. So detention is still helping, but it's not helping as much as you might have thought based on the way that it was all designed. So that system-wide response with detention still leads to problems in terms of flooding, erosion, and pollution problems. So lately, and if you went to the last webinar with Jim Eckenrode, you would have heard a lot about this. We've really become focused on what are variously called green infrastructure or best management practices, things like rain gardens, rain barrels, infiltration trenches. Those are really important. But trying to get a stormwater system that does a better job on kind of more closely mimicking the natural state of a forest, that's really important. This is a wet pond design in Pittsburgh. We were on a tour over there, the St. Francis students, just checking out some of their designs. So here they're trying to get some evapotranspiration going on so that some of the water goes back up into the sky, but then also there's infiltration, trying to get that water to go into the ground. So it's not just detention. Here's another example of a BMP, just a roadside, kind of parking bump out that has infiltration. Infiltration, I should explain, is just water soaking into the ground. So that's what we mean by infiltration. And this is an engineered soil in here to try to get the water that they can route, from the street into that bump out to get that water to go down into the ground rather than to keep, running down the hill there on the that's on the east side in Pittsburgh. So that infrastructure is important, and it's good to see more and more of that being put in. And for the city of Pittsburgh, it's really an economic thing that's driving them. All right, so first flush, impervious surface. One of the big things that you run into from a kayak in Pennsylvania or in Appalachia is acid mine drainage, or abandoned mine drainage. If you're from the area, you're probably familiar with this kind of a scene. So abandoned mine drainage, what that is when we have coal, there's some pyrite associated with that coal. So this is like fool's gold, iron sulfide. When that gets oxidized or exposed to oxygen and water, then the pyrite dissolves and makes sulfuric acid. That's what this is, right? H2SO4 is over here. but it also releases a lot of metals like this iron. And that's what Matt and I, what we're standing on there is, this is an old flooded ventilation shaft. This is in like St. Michael area. And then we're standing on a pile of iron oxide, which can actually be quite beautiful as it is here in this picture. Other metals are also in that water. So the black, if you see some black staining in an acid mine drainage situation, that could be manganese, or some white staining like this, all that, you know, kind of white globby stuff. That's aluminum oxide, and aluminum hydroxide, I should say. So when that material goes into streams, it's really bad for the stream. So this is a mine drainage polluted stream going into Clearfield Creek. And you can see the iron oxide. You can see kind of the aluminum hydroxide staining, kind of the white staining out there in the middle. And that buildup of the iron oxides on the bottom of the stream is bad for the benthic environment, bad for the bottom of the food chain in terms of bug life. And then the aluminum is also a toxic toxic metal for got a question in the chat. The chat is kind of off to the side here, so I'm not sure, you know, how attentive I'm being to here. But Sharon asked, any reason why there is not a test graph for nitrates? That's just yeah, there would be nitrates in that runoff too. But you know, I just didn't you know, I wasn't graphing that for that particular system. So, right, definitely nitrates are part of the problem as well. Okay, so mine drainage is actually an area where there's been a lot of improvement. And again, that's something I've seen from the seat of a kayak over the last 30 years. When I first started kayaking the Stony Creek, it was really orange. And nowadays, you can fish the Stony Creek where we go kayaking. It's really improved. And that's because of all these passive treatment systems that have been put in. So the Stony Creek Conemaugh River Improvement Project, along with like the Somerset County Conservation District and the Cambria County Conservation District, they've done so much to get funding for these passive treatment systems like this wetland that our graduate environmental engineer John is sitting in there. And they have really made a huge difference. It's just been remarkable at the improvement in water quality in the Stony Creek. It's not perfect, still has a long way to go. There's a need for ongoing work in that area, but it's really an area of kind of hope and improvement for our environment locally. And I really see it in part as an economic thing. People don't want to move where the streams are disgusting. And so I think that by doing this, making these improvements to our local environment, we have real opportunities for economic growth. Untreated sewage. Yeah, there's untreated sewage that goes into streams. If you can think of like straight piping. There's a kind of an interesting phenomenon over here. This is our friend acid mine drainage again. This is on Bradley Run around Gallitzin. And kind of hard to see, but down here, this is the effluent of a wastewater treatment plant. So the town of Gallitzin, their wastewater treatment plant, the treated wastewater goes in right next to this this stream. And it turns out their wastewater treatment plant hasn't always been the best, hasn't always worked out as well as it should. But the effects of that have been masked. So if you go to this stream, what you really see is the mine drainage. And in fact, if you make measurements, water quality, everything just gets, all the impacts of that wastewater just get kind of overwhelmed by the mine drainage. So it's hard to see that. But now, as we've been cleaning up the acid mine drainage, we're starting to see some of those untreated or poorly treated sewage going into the streams. And they're definitely, this eventually goes into Clearfield Creek, which is another good kayaking stream. And there's definitely some straight piping going on in Clearfield Creek if you go by your nose. This is my friend Paint Creek again, actually, and this is a sewage pipe, and it used to leak. They've replaced it, but it used to leak like crazy. And one time, several of us, we went in the summer, and I don't know why we would do this, but we got leaked on, and we all got like these rashes on our arms. So, I don't know. It goes to show how addicted I guess we are to going down Paint Creek that we would kayak in acid mine drainage sewage. Anyway, they did fix that up. It's in better shape now. Invasive species in disturbed landscapes. So you've probably seen Japanese knotweed, thought about some of the other invasive species, and riverbanks are like a place where you just see the knotweed like crazy. I mean, they tend to be disturbed, whether by human activity or just by, the natural processes, riverine processes of erosion. Those riverbanks seem to be great places for invasive species to just take over. It's not uncommon to be, along a river and just see this sea of that knotweed next to it. And it's really a pain if you want to get out. It's like you're tangling through this knotweed. So getting back to that access thing that we were talking about a little earlier, it impedes our access. And then lastly, a lesson that you learn about watershed science is just litter, garbage. That litter, you can see it on the side of the road, but it all ends up in the streams eventually. So these river cleanups that watershed organizations will organize. Those are really great things to do. This one's for the Juniata River, but you can see that guy got quite a haul of trash out of the creek. And I don't know, why people think like a stream is a good place to dispose of a car. But it does happen, from time to time. You'll be kayaking along and there will be someone's car. So hopefully, that could be maybe not happening in the future. All right, so there was a tour of Pennsylvania whitewater, a little bit of watershed science, with an emphasis on the way I see it from my kayak. And then the last thing I want to talk about here is what you could do if you would want to go. And first of all, just maybe a little motivation to going. It's a great sport. It's really fun. It keeps you in good shape. It can be thrilling, but it doesn't have to be. It's also great for kids. So I get my kids out there in the kayak, in the canoe. It's really a good way to connect with the environment. So that's one of the things that I like about taking my kids out is it helps them get a sense of kind of the stewardship that they should exercise as they get older over this great resource that we have been blessed with here in Pennsylvania. And like I say, I've been I keep showing you Paint Creek and all these waterfalls and stuff like that. But it's not just for adrenaline junkies. Like my kids, they don't go over the waterfalls. They just want to kind of float along and on a sunny day. And so there's lots of opportunities for that in Pennsylvania. One kind of cool organized activity is the Kiski-Conemaugh Sojourn. So the Conemaugh Valley Conservancy, on a yearly basis, they organize this sojourn where it's like a multi-day thing, but you can join for different parts of it. And you take kind of a trip down the Stony Creek, the Conemaugh, and the Kiskiminitis. They obviously they're shut down, with the virus and everything, but once that goes away, I'm sure they'll be starting up that sojourn. They've been doing it for a long time. And if you get involved in it, like they'll have a way to have a boat, and they'll kind of show you how to do it and provide safety and all that kind of stuff. So if you've never done this kind of thing and you're like, how can I get involved? That sojourn would be a good way to do it. I mentioned a little earlier about this water trails guide. So this is the PA Fish and Boat Commission. They have this water trails guide for different. These would be more like canoeing rivers. So like the West Branch of the Susquehanna, or the Juniata, or the Raystown branch of the Juniata, or like the Loyalhanna, the Allegheny. Those are all like pretty gentle type of rivers. And on these water trail guides, they have a lot of information about like access points, things, dangers that you might encounter, things that you want to look for, what kind of water level you want to have in order to go, so that you're not just hung up on rock. Maybe some information about like seasons, when it would be a good time to go. So that's a really good resource if you're interested in, more of like a kind of a recreational kayaking or a canoeing type trip, or even just like a inner tube, float, with the cooler and everything like that. So that's a place I would point to in terms of a good place to look for information about access, and other information. And this just kind of focusing in on, I would encourage you to just kind of explore that, but kind of focusing in, kind of locally, the Conemaugh River is a really nice, kind of family float down there below the Conemaugh Lake. And a cool thing about it is you can go any time of the year. So you can go in the, the hottest, day of summer, you can go down there, and it's just beautiful. So there's a kind of a blow up of it, and that's a really nice stretch of river. You can rent you can go to this company, Salzburg Kayak. I have no affiliation. I never even went there. I have my own kayaks, but you can rent from them. And I think there are some other companies around there that rent out boats if you don't have your own. So if you're looking for kind of a cool summer adventure, that or one of those other water trails, I would highly recommend it. If the whole adrenaline junkie thing kind of appeals to you, I would promote the Ben's Creek Canoe Club. So in Johnstown, they've got a really active canoe club, the Ben's Creek Canoe Club, and they are always getting. They have a real active social media. Their Facebook is real active, and they run pool sessions in the wintertime to get people introduced to the sport. They run beginner classes in the area, and of course they help people progress to do the harder stuff. And this guy right here, pictured there, Steve Podradsky, he over the really the last 20 years or so, he's been kind of one of the heart and soul of that canoe club. And I actually took him out the first time on the river, the first time he ever went. So that was he was following me. So he's just done amazing work with the Ben's Creek Canoe Club, in terms of making that sport work. And I didn't picture it here, but you maybe have seen the Greenhouse Park down on the Stony Creek in Johnstown. That's another place where in the summer, if you wanted to, get into kayaking, the Ben's Creek Canoe Club, they'll have days where they'll take boats down there and just let people hop in and try it out. So that's a thing to look for. And like I say, check out that Ben's Creek Canoe Club website or their Facebook page, and you'll learn more. The other thing, in terms of just resources, and if you wanted to get into kind of the whitewater scene, there are a number of different like kayaking schools down around Ohiopyle. So this one, River Sport, which is in like the Confluence area, upstream of Ohiopyle, they do a really nice job. They run really good schools. They have a lot of programs for kids. And they are really top notch in terms of teaching boating, and the other places down in Ohiopyle will also have similar kinds of things. Again, I have no affiliation with River Sport, just appreciate the work that they've done over the years. So okay, so that's kind of what I wanted to say. So here's a recap. I told you that we have great kayaking in Pennsylvania, and maybe it's not as good as in truth as what's out in Oregon or Idaho or Colorado, but still we have just a great resource here in Pennsylvania, and it's just a great pleasure to take advantage of it. And the second thing I told you is that rivers are a really good way to experience the environment, to experience environmental science and engineering. I know one of the early presentations on this webinar series was by Alan Hammond, who spent years taking students out on canoe trips as part of his AP Environmental Science program. So, there's another example where it's an excellent teaching tool to go out on the river and experience it firsthand. And then lastly, I told you that you could go kayaking or canoeing. You could do that this summer, and you would have a good time. Maybe some of you already go. So hopefully I gave you a few more resources maybe to pursue that. So with that, I'll thank you for your attention. And if you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to field those. And this is my email address. If you want to reach out with any questions or what was that, one website, that kind of thing, feel free to screenshot that email address and hit me up, or you can just search me on the St. Francis faculty directory. So yeah, any questions?
Well, thank you very much for that great presentation. Very, very interesting. Different kind of look at, I think, waterways in Pennsylvania. So I had put up the poll, and I will hit share results here. This was earlier, so we can see this here. Have you ever been kayaking? And so hopefully you can see the answers there. We've got pretty evenly split, yes, yes, no, and no. And then nobody's actually taken students out on the stream. So, but kind of interesting results. So does anybody have any questions? So I guess I'll ask a question. If you want to go out into like a stream, does it have to be like public? Is any stream available for going out in the water? What's kind of the rules there? If you're going through somebody's private property, like can you stop? What kind of guidance do you have for that type of thing?
Yeah, it really varies by state, but in Pennsylvania, the laws are very I'll call them liberal, just like in the sense that you have a lot of freedom. So if you can get in at a public access point, you can paddle through a person's land in general, and you're allowed to get out in portage for matters of safety, basically. Now you have to be respectful, like especially on some of these smaller streams that we go out and do. Even though we have like the legal right, sometimes a landowner they're a little skeptical of what you're up to there. So you want to be real respectful about where you park, especially where you get in and get out and those sorts of things. But in general, my experience in Pennsylvania has been that really there's no problem. The one kind of contentious place lately has been the Little Juniata, and that really doesn't have to do with boating. That has to do with fishing. So there's a guy that is trying to run like actually it's the guy that owns New Pig. He's trying to run like this kind of fishing club over around Spruce Run, and so he doesn't really want people to go through his section of the Juniata of the Little J, because he wants people to pay to go fish there. So anyway, but you're allowed. I mean, you can float through. It turns out that when kayaking's really good, usually the fishing's not that great because it's kind of hot. The water's kind of hot. It's not really that content. But that's one area where there's some access contention. You go to some other states, it's different. Notably Virginia. So they have just because of the Commonwealth laws, like when Virginia was a British, part of Britain, right? Britain colony. Some landowners have grants from the King of England, and it says they own the stream, and so there you can't go kayaking through their stream. That American Whitewater affiliation, they do a lot of work on trying to gain access. A lot of times they work with landowners. They try to kind of just talk to landowners rather than do a kind of contentious legal battle, which doesn't work really. They try to work with landowners and come up with a way that kayakers can go. That's not that the landowners find acceptable. So that's really how that mostly works. So yeah, so you want to be respectful, but for the most part, yeah, if you can get in at a legal place and get out at a legal place, you're good to go, especially in Jim Eckenrode wanted me to say something about safety. Um, so I think it's a pretty safe sport, actually. It is like high water. You want to be careful about that. It's good to go with another person, so that you can have help if you get into trouble. There is risk, of course. Like anything else, there's some risk associated with it. But I think that it's a pretty a pretty safe activity. You're looking at the statistics. It's certainly nothing like ice climbing or anything like that. Rock climbing, those are statistically much more dangerous than kayaking. But people do get injured or even drown in kayaking. There are places that are more dangerous than others. It's good to be aware of that, of course.
Have you seen any effect from COVID on the number of people in the river? Like, has that affected it? I know state parks have seen a lot of uptick in, outdoor activity. Has that affected the whitewater rafting community?
I don't know. Yeah, I haven't noticed a big change. Like that there's more traffic on the Stony Creek or anything like that. People are still out doing it, but it's kind of like there's a certain community, that does the Stony all the time or whatever river, and it's like you just see those same characters. So like I was mentioning that guy with the gray beard, old Barry Toscano. It's like, yeah, there's Toscano. So it's still the same crowd basically.
The executive director of the Fish and Boat Commission just did an interview with a Somerset County journalist recently and said that through COVID that unpowered boat registrations were up something like 40% or something like that.
Kayaking was really around like 2000, around that time, kind of 20, 25 years ago. It was really popular, and people thought like, oh, it's going to be like snow. It's like the next big thing. Like it's going to be like mountain biking or snowboarding or something like that. So there was a lot of like new boat companies, and then it just kind of died off. Like it wasn't turned out. Maybe I don't know why, but maybe people who bought a kayak way back when, they're getting back into it or something. So that'd be cool if they did.
Joel, do you have any experience with working with any groups as far as kind of that, as far as gaining access? Again, Bedford County, a lot of great streams, especially in the springtime. You can get into those smaller tributaries of the Raystown branch. But I mean, I hate to say it, but I've encountered some nasty landowners that don't appreciate kayakers at all, especially as they gain popularity and there's more of them floating through.
Right. Yeah, sure. I think that's, like for whitewater streams, definitely the American Whitewater affiliation, and then local like Bends Creek Canoe Club is the best way, I think, to handle that kind of thing. So I kind of think what kind of the analog would be in Bedford County, especially if it's not so much a whitewater stream as more like a fun float trip. So it's like there's maybe less of an organization, around that end of the sport, even though that's really where like the popularity of kayaking, that's where it's really grown, is in, those more kind of open fishing style type kayaks. That's, when I started, you had to like make your own fiberglass kayak, and it was really narrow and really long, and there were like spiders living down in there and everything like that. So that kind of limited the appeal. You had to like wiggle your legs down in, but those more like open, stable boat designs have really opened up the sport. And it seems like, that there's kind of a need for like a recreational kayakers association or something like that would work on those same types of access issues that maybe, one place to look would be the American Canoe Affiliation or Association, American ACA, American Canoe Association. That they might do some things on more, kind of canoe or recreational type streams. But yeah. I think where it's kind of a new thing, that's where you run into more of the landowners. And the thing is, like, to not like really, you want to, on the one hand, you do want to press your legal rights in a way, but on the other hand, it's better to kind of work with people than to work against them, so I think that's been the experience of the whitewater community has been when we've, kind of worked with a landowner rather than against them. That's when progress is made in terms of access.
Thanks. Yeah, I even thought about getting in touch with county commissioners to get involved and work with that, just maybe certain farms or something gaining access, just because I think there's an economic development portion of that could really be helpful and that they may get on board with.
Definitely. I think that's like the Bends Creek Canoe Club has just been pounding that issue. Like, hey, the Stony Creek can bring visitors to the Johnstown area. It can make people want to live, to relocate in Johnstown. It's the kind of thing, like, think about how addicted I am to going on the Stony Creek. I don't want to move away from here because of the Stony Creek. So maybe you can argue whether that's a good thing for Johnstown or bad, but I don't want to move. But for other people, like trying to reverse that kind of brain drain phenomenon, just having reasons, things that people want to stay for or move here for. I think that's that's kind of a key ingredient to economic development. So I agree with you, like that government, like local government officials should really be interested in helping develop the recreational water resources that we have in Pennsylvania, because they really are, phenomenal. Well, cool. Well, thanks for listening to me, and it was fun talking about kayaking. I was really worried about doing this, about how it would go, because it's not my normal thing, like talking about engineering. So anyway, thanks for listening, and like I said, if you want to get in touch, please feel free to hit me up on the email.
Thank you, Joel. I'm going to put the feedback form into the chat, so feel free to fill that out, the Act 48 form there if you need credit, and the general feedback form if you have anything you want to let us know at St. Francis in particular. We'd appreciate hearing from you. And I guess we will wrap it up, but I will put up here, and of course now it's not going to go ahead. There we go. Once again, if you haven't signed up for some of the future sessions, feel free to check us out at francis.edu/bwet. And with that, wish everybody a nice day. I'll leave it up here for one moment so you can get to the chat. And thanks very much. Take care.